Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are tuning from, welcome to my channel, The Value Creation Playbook. My name is Raja Mukherjee. Today in episode 25, we talk of a increasingly growing trend of leveraging interim managers, interim CXOs, interim functional heads for different types of roles. And we are going to deep dive on the why, what, and how of this entire interim management playbook. So let's dive right in. Interim leadership has evolved from a reactive fix to a proactive strategy. In today's high velocity business development areas, business environments, P roll-ups or enterprise pivots, interim CXOs are deployed not just to fill gaps, but to accelerate performance and transformation. Particularly in digital transformation and post-merger context, these leaders bring execution-first mindsets, strategy clarity, and political neutrality, often delivering impact within 90 days or max 120 days. In this episode, we explore three critical topics: interim leaders as transformation catalysts. We talk of bridging leadership gaps in critical moments, which you often see in high pressure stabilization challenged engagements. And lastly, how do we measure the ROI on interim leadership engagements? We will unpack real world case studies, compare interim CXs to consultants and permanent hires, and see what works. Let's dive right into how interim CXOs are reshaping the leadership model across industries. How do I define an interim CFO or a CXO? And what's the strategic utility of having one? The way I define an interim CXO is a seasoned executive brought in for a defined period, typically 3 to 12 months, to lead transformation, stabilize operations, or bridge leadership gaps. Essentially, he or she comes in to do bits and pieces of all the three broad areas that I talked of, but sometimes they also get hired to fix one particular burning problem. So that's also possible. And unlike consultants, they own the outcomes. Unlike a permanent hire, they move fast and don't require long onboarding cycles. Interim roles span CFOs for fundraising readiness, CEOs for post-merger integration, CMOs or CTOs, whatever the case may be. In Q1 25, Klarna appointed an interim CFO to navigate IPO prep, restructure reporting, and align investor narratives. This resulted in a 22% improvement in financial transparency and accelerated readiness for their IPO. Their strategic utility lies in their ability to deliver clarity, challenge legacy inertia, and implement frameworks to drive measurable outcomes. For enterprise, they inject agility with complex transformation programs because that's what they bring in, the experience of having managed large organizations at different stages of their journey. So that's how I define an interim CXO. I also call them as transformation catalysts. And let me tell you why. Transformation demands urgency. It demands very high cross-functional alignment and executive discipline. Traits that are often diluted when there's a high-pressure environment. But this interim CXOs bring tested playbooks, a high level of neutrality, and that's why they are akin to drive change with a lot of speed. Interim CXOs often deploy heat maps, maturity models, and sprint-based execution frameworks to diagnose and act quickly. Their impact, the way I see this, is amplified by their ability to align teams around OKRs, reset cultural norms, and deliver quick wins that build momentum. Unlike permanent hires who may take months to ramp, interim leader hit the ground running. So for advisors and founders, this interim CXO pool is a high leverage tool to accelerate change without destabilizing the core. So what are the 3 or 4 differences between the interim versus consultant versus permanent hires? So there are essentially 4 differences. Speed: an interim CXO can get deployed within days. Permanent hires may take months. Cost: that's on the flip side. Interims are more expensive because they're short term, but of course, the ROI is faster. The impact: the one biggest plus point for leveraging an interim CXO is because they have been tried and tested in their previous roles, they understand the requirement of the new assignment quickly, and that actually helps in driving the impact in 15 days, 20 or 30 days max. The return on investment starts showing. The other one is because they are specialists, and they can come and support you in different phases of your organization's life cycle. It's easy for you to pick and choose and bring in experts at the right moment, rather than having a permanent hire who really doesn't understand the nuances of everything baked into all into one. So that's where the interim CXO makes perfect sense. And there are a lot of examples where uh, people got hired into this interim CXO role and they have done a fantastic job. Honestly, sometimes there are chances that the interim CXOs will take a bit longer to settle down. Uh, but usually what I've seen is they're pretty fast in settling down because of their lineage. And let's also understand that interim CXOs, consultants, and permanent hires each serve distinct purposes and they are not interchangeable. So, which one you choose for your particular organization depends on the need of the hour. Uh, Essentially, any role who gets embedded into the business, accountable for the KPI, and gets focused on execution from day one should be the right choice for your organization at that particular moment of time. Okay, that's the way I see this. You should also remember sometimes we get carried on by the high cost of the interims, uh, but you need to think of the return on investment. You are definitely bringing that person in because the need of the hour is to have a very specialized person come in and support you. And that's why you are paying that extra mullah to bring in the best of the breed to help you out. I always recommend uh, don't cut corners when you identify leaders in this particular roles, because ultimately your goal is to come out of the distress situation that you are already in, and that's where if it's an extra 100K or 200K that you are spending, it's really worth it. It's worth the time and effort of coming out of that challenge situation and having a smooth runway. That's the way I see this. I also uh, tell everybody, all my clients, that timing for hiring and onboarding a senior leader is is everything. Leadership gaps often emerge during critical transitions, post-funding, post-merger, or post a crisis situation. Waiting for the perfect hire can stall momentum, frustrate and stretch teams, and erode investor confidence. Interim CXOs fill in these gaps with execution-ready leadership, stabilizing operations, while permanent solutions are sourced. So in Jan of this year, 2025, a fintech firm post-acquisition deployed an interim CTO to align tech stacks and lead integrations. Within 60 days, this gentleman resolved 12 legacy issues and improved deployment velocity by over 40%. Timing is everything. A delayed hire can mean missed quarters, failed launches, or investor churns. These interims also serve as a transition architect, documenting processes, identifying successors, and ensuring proper knowledge transfer. For advisors, it's a reminder to recommend interim solutions proactively. That's the keyword. Proactively is very important and not reactively. So, what are the common triggers? When do you start looking for an interim senior guy? Interim CXOs are often deployed in response to strategic inflection points. Common triggers include founders' bandwidth constraints or burnout. That gentleman really doesn't have any time to support key decision-making processes. Second could be M&A integration complexity, and you need an M&A expert coming in. Third, which I often see, is GTM pivots or product relaunches, and you need a marketing expert come in and support you. Fundraising, readiness or IPO prep. Lastly, crisis recovery, which is also very common because of churn spike or a data breach, etc. Several PE firms backed roll-ups in healthcare and logistics, which has deployed interim chief operating officers to harmonize operations across acquisitions. These leaders built integration playbooks, standardized KPIs, and aligned cross-functional teams within 90 days. Let's also remember there are other triggers. Say, for example, there's a CXO resignation, there's a board pressure to professionalize operations, or an investor push or a mandate for financial transparency. That is where an interim leader can deliver stability, clarity, and speed in all the situations that I just mentioned. So the way I see this, as I was telling earlier also, interim CXOs aren't just reactive, they're proactive levers for transformation. Since we touched upon private equity and VC, let's dwell a couple of minutes on the way I see this in this particular sector. Private equity and venture capital firms increasingly use interim leaders as part of their operating model. PE firms deploy interim CFOs post-acquisition to clean up financials, implement reporting standards, and prepare for exits. VCs use interim CMOs to accelerate go-to-market if you're in a Series A to a C startup, or interim coups to stabilize post-funding scale. Equity, for example, maintains a bench of interim operators for digital transformation across its portfolio. These leaders are vetted, industry-aligned, and execution-focused. They're deployed with clear mandates, board sponsorship, and measurable KPIs. So if you are running a portfolio company, interim CXOs offer credibility with investor speed in execution and flexibility in cost structure. For funds, they de-risk transition, accelerate value creation, and improve exit readiness. Always remember, strategic advisors should build relationships with interim networks and proactively recommend placements aligned to portfolio needs. They should sense the need well ahead and be able to tap into their network to identify who is that guy, who is that magician who can be called in to support the organization at that particular distress situation. One thing that I also tell my clients is you need to be clear about the founder dynamics. Interim leaders must navigate founder psychology with precision, and that's a very tricky area. I have seen senior leaders falter. Founders often view those companies as extension of themselves, making influence, authority, and trust dictate their next step of action. The best interim CXOs mirror founder vision while challenging execution gap. They act as strategic mirrors, not power threats. A successful interim chief operating officer aligned with the founder's brand ethos while restructuring fulfillment ops, rituals, weekly alignment rituals, shared dashboards, and transparent KPIs build trust and avoided friction. Key principles, and there are 4 of them. Respect the founder's role. That's primary. Align on outcome, not personalities. Very difficult to manage, but that's one of the key principles. Use data to depersonalize decision. Data talks. Data gives you the clarity. Data is the truth. Always keep this in mind when you have those conversations. And communicate frequently and clearly. So for advisor, if you are in advising a PE or a VC, it's about ensuring cultural fit and role clarity right from day one. We have talked of the why and the what, but how are the tools and frameworks that can be used by an interim leader? High impact CXOs deploy structured tools to accelerate onboarding and execution. These include heat map for organizational maturity, OKR frameworks for alignment, go-to-market scoreboards for marketing pivots, and of course, financial dashboards for investor readiness, and also spread the message of where we are landing towards. Lastly, talent matrices for org design and succession. There's a recent case where an interim CMO used a go-to-market heat map to reallocate budget across underperforming channels, increasing cost of acquisition efficiency by 27%. That's a big number. There's also one CFO who built a burn rate dashboard that helped the Series B founder extend runway by 5 months. At the end of the day, these tools create clarity, drive accountability, and they also serve as handover assets for permanent hires when our interim leader exits. So this is a win-win for all. Now let's talk of how do I measure ROI on interim engagements. We covered earlier that interim execs cost much more. Their time on the runway is very limited. They have to take off. And they also have a very predefined entry and exit timeline. Always remember, ROI on interim leadership isn't about cost saving. It's about strategic unlocks. Metrics could include time to impact, say churn reduction in 90 days. Second one could be fundraising acceleration. Has he been able to do something on the fundraising front? Operational uplift. Am I fixing issues on the shop floor? Fourth, team morale, especially if it's a global organization. How am I improving the retention rates? Lastly, but not the least, investor confidence and board alignment. To measure ROI effectively, you need to define KPIs upfront and agree with the incoming CXO, track weekly progress, and conduct post-engagement retrospectives. These retrospectives learnings will actually go into your knowledge management, which will help you in your future iterations. All these results you need to share with stakeholders. Visibility is key once you come out of the current situation. All these tools justify interim engagements and demonstrate strategic value. We have talked of all the good things, why we need, what we need, and how do we use leverage frameworks. But as I was telling you earlier in my previous episodes also, whatever you do, whatever the good thing you do, there is still a risk attached to that particular action. What are the risks in this case? Cultural misalignment, unclear mandates, founder resistance to change, or a scope creep. It could be any or multiples of these. I have mentioned 4 mitigation strategies. There could be 5 more, but these are the 4 key ones that I usually see in my assignments. The need to have clear scope and deliverables. Secondly, weekly alignment rituals with founders and boards is an absolute must. Communication is key. I cannot stress this more. Role clarity and authority boundaries. If it's unclear, sit with the founder, sit with the board, get it clarified. Create a RACI. Lastly, exit strategy, planning, and handover documentation. Make it very clear on what you want to do, what you can do, and how will you close your engagement. Advisors in this situation play a very major role. They sit across the founder and the CXO and help in setting expectation, facilitating alignment, and managing transition. Transition, of course, to a permanent hire will come, say, after 9 or 12 months time period. It is also essential for strategic advisors and VC firms that you create a vetted bench of interim CXOs across function. Could be finance, ops, go-to-market, product. 4 criteria is what I think are essential and critical for you to build that bench. Prior experience. I mean, you can go on hours and hours, but that's the key. Industry relevance and stage fluency. Are they relevant for that particular situation that the organization is? Third, execution first mindset. Lastly, emotional intelligence and founder empathy. Absolutely key, because as I was telling you earlier, founders are so connected with the organization, they think of that as an extension of themselves. Having a ready bench also enables fast deployment during inflection points. It also strengthens your advisory brand, offering founders just not strategy, but execution muscle. Always remember, and I told this earlier also in the previous slide, it's all about being proactive, identifying when the requirement is going to come and fill it accordingly, not being reactive. There is a lot of work happening on the interim leadership markets front in emerging markets, India, Southeast Asia, LATAM. Founders are increasingly open to fractional CXOs for go-to-market, finance, and ops, especially post-funding or during regulatory transitions. In Bangalore, where I stay, a healthcare startup deployed an interim CFO to navigate compliance, investor reporting, and pricing. The result? Faster board alignment and improved financial transparency. And as in the previous slide, cultural nuances matter. Interim leaders must adapt to founder-led cultures, family-run businesses, and hybrid governance models. Interim leadership isn't just a Western construct, it's a global growth lever. And it's all there for the founders to leverage this experienced pool of leaders who can definitely manage the distressed situation that the organization is and make those turnarounds quickly. Wonderful. We have made it to the last part of today's episode. The way I see this, interim leadership is no longer a reactive fix. It's a must, especially depending on the situation that you are in. Always remember, interim leaders are transformation catalysts. It's up to you to leverage their expertise in the right moment and in the right phase of the organization. They come and help you in very difficult situations by bridging the leadership gaps. And lastly, there is definitely a very high return on investment on interim engagements, the CXO that you leverage. So essentially, three call to actions for you. If you're scaling fast, build a vetted bench of interim leaders across finance, etc. If you are advising founders, recommend interim CXOs as tactical levers, not fallback options. Or it could be that you are yourself navigating a transformation journey. Go ahead, identify who do you need from the market, or reach out to me, happy to help. But at the end, you should deploy the interim talent that you need so much to stabilize the integration and accelerate the execution. The takeaway is very clear. Interim CXOs are not placeholders, they're performance multipliers. This brings me to the end of today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. In case you are keen to have a conversation on the frameworks, playbooks, portfolio alignment, connect with me on LinkedIn or email me at the email being shown in your screen. Stay tuned. Please do like and subscribe to my channel. Till next time, take care, stay safe, and we speak soon. Bye for now.